Hi, everyone. So, Ben Klang. I'm from a company called Mojo Lingo. We are application developers. We work with companies who want to bring real-time communications, whether it's voice, video, or text, and build it into their business applications. So a lot of our customers are enterprise, although we've also worked some with carriers and other more telco traditional. But I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite topics, which is contextual communications, this idea that we have communications, but we really want to bring the context of everything else we're doing to our communications. So the idea of communication as a feature. So I'll jump right into it. If you go way back, you imagine when people first started to communicate with each other. Context was pretty obvious. It was whatever was around you. These two guys, these two farmers talking, the context is pretty obvious that they're probably about to have some delicious pork for dinner. And when he's talking about which pig it's going to be that one right there. But pretty quickly, what we needed to do is we needed to start communicating at greater distances, right? There's a lot of utility when you can ask the guy from the village across the valley for help in mowing your yard. Or we want to actually stretch it even farther in case of distress. You want to be able to reach across great distances to ask for help. As we continue to do that, we've kind of perfected that, right? We have the ability now to call anyone in the world at any time with nothing more than a phone number, thanks to technology like satellites and long distance and telephones. And what that's really gotten us to is it's gotten us hooked on this idea that we need a specific device for communicating, that we have this one way to reach out and get a hold of somebody. Well, the technology all around us has really improved dramatically, and most of us, probably sitting in this room, in fact, I can see several of you right now, we do our work in one of these little magic boxes. These boxes are great because we start baking in tons and tons and tons of context. So, whether you're creating a document or you have blueprints, or if you're like me and you write code, you end up putting all of that stuff into the computer. But then we still reach for this very dedicated device when it comes time to communicate. Now, maybe in this room, not so much. Maybe we're using Skype. But even Skype is an external tool compared to the other things that you're doing or that you're building. So I think we can do better. I think we can find a way to put communication in context with the kind of things we're doing. And at Mojo Lingo, that's what we do. So when Alan asked me to put this talk together, he asked me to focus on a case study, some real-world application of contextual communications. And I only have 10 minutes, so I put together one, but I've got some detail on it. This is a customer of ours, Power Home Remodeling. I'm guessing none of you have heard of them. They're not a huge company. They're about 1,500 people, about a little under $400 million a year in revenue, so medium-sized business. They are not in a sexy industry. They do home remodeling. They do roofs and siding and windows and doors. They're not located in Silicon Valley. They're located in Pennsylvania. But they've done a really tremendous job of using technology, leveraging technology to grow their business, and then especially leveraging communication to support that technology. And that's what I want to talk about. So a little bit of background on this company. They are a highly distributed team. And by that I mean I think they have 13 offices around the United States, and a very large percentage of their workforce is actually out in the field. So this is a map. It's showing the most recent 200 appointments in a zip code near my home. You can imagine each one of those pinpoints is where we sent somebody, whether it was to speak with a homeowner about possible work, or it was someone to actually do the installation, or someone to do the inspection afterward. Each one of these represents somebody out in the field, and this is just one zip code. Now, as these people are out there doing their work, and I realize this is kind of small, so I'll try to help interpret. As they're doing their work, they're generating a lot of context. They're generating a lot of artifacts of the work they're doing. They're putting those documents into the system. So right here, you have a list of these reports. And they're various things. They're contracts, they're pre-installation inspections, they're purchase orders, and we're capturing all that. We're actually, what they're doing is, they're a largely paperless company. So they'll actually generate all the contracts on an iPad. They'll send it to a printer that they carry with them. If it needs signatures, they'll have the homeowner sign it, and then upload it back into the system. We capture the document. We also capture who created the document, and the date and time, of course. And by the way, they scan it with their mobile device. So this is a very mobile-first kind of organization. Of course, as they're doing the work, we also want to capture work in progress. We want before and after pictures. So they'll actually take pictures of the installation. They'll actually take pictures of what it looked like before, of it in progress, and then afterward. And all of that gets captured through the mobile device, uploaded through the web, and we'll capture not only who did it and the date and time, we'll actually capture the device that did it, so we know what kind of devices our field crew has, and we'll also know, we'll take the GPS coordinates just to make sure they didn't actually accidentally attach it to the wrong house. So we have a tremendous amount of context coming here. And of course, they want a way to communicate with each other. So we give them notes, kind of simple things. I thought this one's kind of funny, which is why I included it. It says, bring some screen. We need to rescue 2 windows that we damaged with a scaffold. I mean, it's construction, it happens. But they're handing off messages here, right? So that the next crew will actually come and they'll bring whatever they need to effect the repair. Now, so far, you might be wondering why I'm standing at a telephony application developer summit and I haven't mentioned telephones yet. And I'm getting to that. So part of what the point I wanted to make is just how much context comes from other things than the telephone. In this case, it's the documents, it's the photos, it's the geolocation, it's the devices. This system is great at collecting all that, but there's a saying that the application, by the way, is called Nitro, and they say Nitro keeps lots of secrets, way more than it gives up. And we want to expose those secrets. We really want to make the entire organization transparent. So one of the tools we built starting about 1.5 years ago was this sort of standard-looking chat interface. You all are familiar with Slack? Who's used Slack? Okay, Slack's awesome. If you haven't, check it out. So Slack's instant messaging tool, if you've ever used, this will look familiar if you've used instant messaging tools. You can see on the left, we've got a list of rooms where I can communicate with various groups of people. I also, toward the bottom, I have individuals I can speak with. And then in the middle is kind of your standard chat UI. We can drag and drop images. We can mention people by groups. They get notifications to their phone. And that's all standard, right? Like that's not groundbreaking in particular. But what we have is lots of data. And one of the things we can do is we made it possible to reference various objects in the system by ID. In this case, we're mentioning an appointment ID. So in this case, I just happen to know the appointment ID, or you can actually copy and paste it or even click it from various parts of the app. If you mention it in chat, the chat system will go to the database and will figure out what that thing is, and it'll show you a preview of it. So now when I'm talking, instead of having to memorize or even copy and paste and load in another tab the information about the appointment, it just all loads right in line. And that makes the conversation much easier, much more fluid. So that's one type of communication, right? So now that in the chat system, if the chat system knows that we're talking about it, it can flag that. And I'll come back to more about that in just a second. Another form of context we get, getting into more of the telephone side, this is a list of support calls that come into this is the internal support line. So these are employees of Power calling in, asking for help with Nitro. And you've got pretty standard information. You have date, time, the caller ID from the device, then the numeric caller ID. This blue column is a little bit more interesting. We're taking the phone number that comes in off the network and looking it up against our internal list of users. Not rocket science by any stretch, but it does at least allow us to see who's calling, and we can associate that call with that user. And we can also see which support rep took the call. But this column is a little bit more interesting. In this case, we can tell, based on when the call came in and the caller ID, that this particular rep happened to be on an appointment. So he's standing in front of a homeowner. He goes to the front of the line. He gets their priority. And what you can't see, because it got cut off, is on the right side, there's also a link to the recording. Now again, we've flagged the home. We have a recording of the call. I think you can see kind of where this is going. So this is a third view. This is a view that we give to the contact center manager. This is actually a mock-up, so the data is fake. But what you can see is on the left, some overall stats, and you have the waiting calls color-coded by how long they've been waiting. Again, nothing new or remarkable. But on this side, we have the list of agents who are actually on a call. They're the ones in red. And then who they're talking to. Again, that blue link is a link to who that person is. Either it's a user of the system, or maybe it's a home or project. But this green dot right here, that's a change. So you probably have all heard those sayings, this call may be recorded for quality assurance purposes. Well, in contact centers, they very often need to sit in on calls and listen for coaching, listen to what people are saying. When we started working with them, if they wanted to do training like that, they actually had to physically disconnect the headset from the phone, insert a splitter, and then plug everybody back in. Clearly, you can't do that while the call is ongoing, because that would be disruptive to the call. So instead, we built this with WebRTC, where they can actually click, it will call into the system from the browser, and they can listen to the call right there. And then and by the way, this button is only accessible if you are a manager in the first place. So we can give the same screen to multiple people, but based on business logic, give them the ability to listen in. And then there's the microphone button if you want to. By default, it's off, but if you want to, you can actually speak, and you're only speaking, it's called a whisper, so you're only speaking to the agent. So what all this is building up to is we now have multiple channels of real-time communication, and we want to tag that to something important in the system. And that's where this leads. This is a sample home. And we have multiple tabs, all the information about the project and the appointment sources. But this communications tab, basically everything ends up here. So if I come back 6 months or 6 years later, and I want to see everything that happened in the context of this home, I have one tab that lists everything. Right here you can see a scheduling call and a confirmation call. But anytime we email the homeowner, anytime a call comes in from a sales rep who needs help, the support line, that gets tagged here. Anytime the appointment is mentioned in chat, that ends up here. And all the recordings are here as well. So the point is, all of these channels go into one place, and all of that information becomes accessible through one UI. Now this is just the home screen. We have a similar view for the agents. We have a similar view for the reps. We can index that data any way that makes sense to the business, and we can get the system to expose the secrets. So like I said, none of these things is particularly revolutionary, but the combination of things brings a tremendous amount of transparency to the business and gives them the ability to collaborate on a scale greater than they had before. So that's it. I'm Ben Klang in Mojo Lingo, and happy if you find this stuff interesting like I do, I'd love to talk to you more about contextual communication. And with that, I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Ben.